Hello, everyone. This is this is Michael Dotterer here in San Francisco, and we're playing a little holiday music. We've got Michael Bublé, "Christmas Baby, Come." I think that's what it says. Christmas holiday music. Gotta love like Michael. Okay, so I just want to first say that this portion of our show today is sponsored by Solvay. You like that? This portion of our show today is sponsored by Solvay. Got my Solvay hat on. Got my Solvay shirt on. And this is where Solvay pays me on the Solvay Visa card, purple card. Love purple. And I do have to have a shout out to all my Stanford Cardinal friends. Go Cardinal, playing the Bruins today. So, and I want to say, because many of you, if you know me, I've learned a lot about the game of American football in the last couple years. You know, you'd think I would have learned it 25 years ago, but I want to say I hope that all the players that play today from Stanford, from UCLA, and all across the country, not only in college, but in high school, because high school, there's a big game here in the Bay Area this weekend, De La Salle High School versus Logan, and I just want to send out good thoughts, vibrations, prayers that no one gets hurt, because I have been studying this, and there's some serious issues dealing with a topic called chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So, putting that aside, I am so excited because I reconnected yesterday with a woman who all I can say is I felt like an angel came from above. And it's true. I mean, this woman is an amazing person, amazing human being.
Thank you.
And you're going to hear about her in just a few minutes, but I'm going to do a little introduction. And she's originally from Mendocino, a beautiful part of California up the north coast, up near Eureka. It's just gorgeous up there. If you've never been there, this is where this wonderful woman started her life. And she's gravitated down to the Bay Area. So she's here in the San Francisco Bay Area, where I am. And she's a speaker. She's an author. She's an entrepreneur. She's a business coach, and she's going to be coaching me. She's also, I think, and maybe she doesn't look at it this way, but she is studying what we call neuro-emotional anti-sabotage techniques, which the acronym is called nesting, and it's helping people remove negative thoughts. So I just want to get on the couch right now and lay down, and because she's going to be my psychiatrist or psychologist too. So I'm going to add that to her. So not only all those things, but an angel from above. She is just amazing. Her books, she's written many books. I mean, and she's going to actually help me write a book. And we talked about she could be the co-author, because she can teach all of us whatever we feel passionate about. You can write a book. You can get it on paper, and you can write a book in 6 weeks or less. Yeah. Everybody can, which is just amazing. So, and some of the books, by the way, that she's written, she's done books on business, personal development. She's even written children's books. I saw one of her books called The Adventures of the Master Pineapple, which is, what a great name. And I went there, and wow, it's amazing. And when I say I went there, I encourage every one of you here. I'm going to show you right now what I love about Google Hangouts. I'm going to do a screen share right now so you can see my screen. And I am going to show you, take you right to SharonAbbott.com. And it's SharonAbbott.com. And I encourage all of you to go to that site. And I went there again this morning to do some research. And there she is. Look at that beautiful picture. And her colors, the purple. The colors of the purple, look at Solavei's purple and her colors are purple. Isn't that
Yeah,
amazing?
we match.
That's amazing. And this site, I started to click, articles and bookstores and about. It's like going through the pyramids with knowledge and information. It's amazing. So I encourage all of you to go to SharonAbbott.com and she'll be there. And then if you want, you can also go to, because we're going to talk about this at another time, neuro-emotional.com. neuro-emotional.com. And that's, as you can see, there is her site, and I'm really excited about this topic as well. So with that said, the topic today, and we're going to go back and we're going to turn off the, we're going to get back onto the screen here. The topic today, and this is something that today's the last day of November, and we're getting close to the end of the year. And, a lot of us, you think of, well, people make New Year's resolutions. And if I asked 100 people right now, would you like to be your own boss? I believe almost everybody's hand would go up. The majority of hands would say, yes, I'd like to be my own boss. But unfortunately, a lot of those hands, people would say, I'd like to do it, but I don't know if I can do it because of maybe some negative thoughts, or I don't have the resources, or my significant other doesn't want me to do that. It's too risky. And that's what Sharon is going to talk about today, because you can be your own boss. And she is an expert at helping entrepreneurs become their own boss. So Sharon, without further ado, it's all yours. Thank you for coming.
Michael, you are so generous. Thank you so much. It's so much fun. It was amazing because I had gone back and looked at the thread, and starting back in 2009, you had wished me a happy birthday, and you have not missed a year since then. So, and that was, I think I was on Facebook May 2008. And so I love how you use social media to connect with people. And that the fact is, you pick up the phone and you actually call people, which I think is the greatest way. Social media provides us a platform to be able to connect with people that otherwise we'd never know. I mean, you and I are 20 minutes apart. You're in San Francisco, I'm over in San Leandro, and we never would have met if it hadn't been for social media. So I love what we can do with social media. And to give you a little more history about, how I got to where I am. I was born in San Francisco, fourth generation California. My great-grandmother was born in San Francisco. My grandfather and my mother were born in the same house in Alameda. My grandfather's parents actually came across the country after working 2 years in the shipyards in Virginia. They earned their passage coming from Ireland and ended up in Alameda. And that my grandfather was born in 1888. And so I love the history of the Bay Area and how it relates to who I am as a person. And when we look at our ancestors, it really helps us identify with the things that we are passionate about and helps us really learn a little bit more about ourselves. So I left Mendocino. Actually, I ran from Mendocino. It's such a small community that I couldn't wait to get out into the great big wide world. Went to school over in Chico, got married, moved down to San Diego. My husband was in the Navy during the Vietnam War, and spent 3.5 years in San Diego, and then moved up to the LA area. It never occurred to me that one place was good, one place was bad. I was so curious about the world that it was a pleasure for me to go out and discover new neighborhoods and to take advantage of, what was around me. And then after leaving San Diego, I moved up to Eureka for a little while, and then back to Chico. And then I was actually, this is kind of mind-boggling for most people who know me, I was an efficiency expert for the state university, California State University. It was still Chico. It wasn't University of California State University. It was Chico State University, and they were in a moratorium in 1977, and I wrote a chargeback system that actually got all the departments profitable. And then Ken Corey, who was then the state controller, said, well, I had to lay off 3 people from my department alone. And when I did the math, I found out that I could leave and those 3 people could keep their jobs. So I went, oh, cool. If I'm going to leave, I'm going to do something really fun. So I picked up and I moved to Hawaii for 5 months. And I just thought that was the greatest thing, treat myself to living in Hawaii for 5 months. But I got island fever. So fortunately, my brother was going to go to Germany for 2 years for being in the Army. And I thought, well, I'm going to come back and see him before he takes off. But it took him, who knows why, 3 months to drive from Georgia to California. So he must have had a really good time, but he has never told anybody what he did on this journey, and we probably don't want to know. So by the time he got here, I had 5 cars at the time. I drove from the Bay Area to Canada to San Diego 5 times in 6 weeks. And I literally could not stop driving. I was just like, I couldn't get pavement under my feet. I had to keep going. And it was ridiculous, although I have friends all up and down the entire Pacific Northwest and all through California. So that was kind of fun. And so I got to visit people and, great times with relatives, my favorite Uncle John. And so I mean, it was kind of a great experience for me. And then I kind of like landed. And one day I thought, geez, I'm going to have to start working because I'm running short of money. So I got a job, and miraculously, 5 months after working, because I was always in the printing publishing industry and I was doing typesetting, we're a very high-end branding design shop in Lafayette. And this woman came in to install our new equipment, and my eyes lit up, and I thought, wow, women can do this? This is in 1977. I thought, wow, I'm going to do this. So I called up the company, and they had an opening, and they actually paid me, believe this or not, $6 an hour plus an expense account. But to me, that was really good because I was making, I think, $5 an hour, no expense account. And I got overtime, and, I got to travel 5 Western states. They sent me to Boston, I think 7, 8 times in the first year to learn new equipment. And I just had a blast. I had so much fun until one day I woke up in Denver and I had no idea where I was. I had no idea where I was supposed to be. And I called my boss and I said, you got to help me because I'm lost. I'm just totally lost. And they call it burnout from too much travel. So I was flying in and out of 5 states a week and driving 1,000 miles a week. And I made it a year and a half doing that before I burned out. So that put me into sales. And because of that sales experience, I was able to work with this Fortune 500 company 8.5 years rather than a year and a half, which is, I was told them I was going to leave. That was it. And they talked me into going into sales. And that sales training that they put me through set me up for the rest of my life to learn how to talk with people, to learn how to engage, how to tell people what they, are looking for and not make it like I'm selling to them, but I'm actually consulting them. So everything in my life kind of fell into place, one thing after another after another. And the reason I want everyone to know this background, we had talked about our personal lives and some of the things that we've been exposed to, and most people could not imagine the upbringing that I had. But I'll tell anybody today that regardless of how difficult my childhood was, and I've only met one person who could actually meet me story for story my whole life. And, I've been speaking for over 20 years, and, I'll tell parts of the story. I don't get into a lot of the details, but I'll tell parts of the story. And, people cannot imagine that I am who I am because of the way that I was raised. But about, I'm going to say maybe 9 years ago, I was over at this ashram in San Ramon. It's halfway between Castro Valley and San Ramon. And this amazing woman, Amma Michi, was coming there, and she is known for hugging children and healing them. And I had chased for 25 years, how do I get through this feeling of not belonging? like not being present, of not being important enough that people should actually pay attention to me. And I went to this event, and the year before, almost the same month, this man had said to me, I know how much work you've done, but can you thank your parents? And I immediately went, for what? And then I went, oh God, more work, more work. So I spent that whole year trying to figure out what it was that my parents gave me. What was that foundation that they gave me? And truly, one of the things that came from my father, and I didn't know this until I was 35, he used to tell people, if you want to get something done, tell Sharon it can't be done. And that was the impetus. That would make me go out and challenge everything until I actually did it, just to prove I could. And, I didn't know he was doing that the whole time I was growing up. So what a great thing to have learned that early in my life. From my mother, and this is kind of a backwards compliment, but my mother used to boil, broil, burn, right? So her cooking was not very inventive, and it certainly wasn't very tasty. So I learned to be a gourmet cook because of that. I started cooking for the family when I was 12. And that was when we had our very first cook stove, because we cooked on a wood-burning stove until I was 12 years old. And so all of these things came together, and we were standing in this ashram waiting in line to get a hug from Amamishi. And I turned to Marty and I said, I am who I am because of my parents and the gifts that they gave me. And in saying it, I became so clear about who I am and what I have to offer. And I think that's when it just dawned on me at that point that finding that peaceful centeredness in our lives is a big part of what we do for work. It's how we are as human beings. It's how we interact in the world and how other people see us. So there's this big disconnect. So we're going through our adolescence, and some kids will say, I want to be a fireman, or I want to be a nurse, I want to be a doctor, or parents will encourage. They'll say, well, I am an attorney, I want you to be an attorney, without even realizing that there is a personality that does well for specific things. And this does the whole tie back to be your own boss guide. So I had told you the story. I was down in San Jose, and this was in 2003, I believe, 2002, 2003. And I had been there 5 years in a row talking to a group of people, mid-management people who had been downsized. They didn't have a job, and the event coordinator asked me to come back. And I did my regular speaking. Do you go out into the community and intermix with people who have jobs? Do you connect with people that you used to work with? Do you look at the newspapers? Like there's a series of papers called Business Journals. It's businessjournals.com. And every week without fail, .com bomb, regardless of what's going on, $1.2 billion of new funding is mentioned in this paper every single week. So what does that equate to on a weekly basis for jobs? And what a great tool to actually find out where these jobs are. So if you want a job, that's one thing, but Michael and I are of the same ilk. We want people to have their own business so that you never have to worry about losing your job ever again. That no matter how hard you work, nobody's going to come in one day, sit you down, and hand you a pink slip, which is what happened to me when I worked for this Fortune 500 company after 8.5 years. And I was devastated. I mean, I related myself, my personality, who I was, to that job. And it was one of the reasons why I decided that I would go out and speak at all of these outplacement agencies around the Bay Area. I wanted people to understand they are not the job. The job is what supports them financially, hopefully, to give them the lifestyle that they choose so that they can spend as much time with their family and friends to have a fulfilled life. And then the job ends up taking over lives, and then we don't have the time to live our lessons. And that's where the frustration comes in. People wake up 50 years old and they go, oh my God, is this what life is really about? So when I'm speaking to all these people who have lost their jobs, I'm trying to inspire them. Like, my father was so busy working 3 jobs just to keep food on the table and make sure that we had, I grew up, one skirt and one blouse and one pair of shoes for the entire school year. So no wonder I started working when I was 12. You know, it was like, I want more clothes, and you would be, I'm embarrassed by how many shoes I have. But you'd be surprised how many shoes I have. But it's an overcompensation for the way I was raised, and people have a tendency to do that. So I'm up there telling my stories, and I'm trying to be entertaining. You can tell I like to laugh, and I want to make other people comfortable and make them laugh. Not one person smiled. Everybody sat there with their arms folded, they're leaning back, feet outstretched, crossed. Not one person reacted for an entire hour. And I was exhausted when I was done, because that interaction with people is what feeds me when I'm speaking. So I went up to Gary when I was done, and I said, Gary, what did I do wrong? I don't understand this. And he said, oh, I should have told you they're all ex-convicts today. What? Gosh, Gary, do you think it would have been a different presentation? My gosh, I mean, here's people who they're going out working, and at the time it was not as bad as it is today, but for every job opening there were 2,000 people applying for that one job. And so you have 1,999 people who do not have a prison record, one person with a prison record. What's the chances that they're ever going to get a job with that kind of competition here in the Bay Area? It's just not going to happen. So we created a system to keep people in the system. And the one story that just boggled my mind, so I was an hour, 15 minutes away from San Jose, where I lived in Walnut Creek at the time. And the whole way home, I'm thinking, this poor young man lost his job in IT, couldn't pay his child support, so the district attorney who was running for re-election put him in jail for 2 years because of non-child support payments. So he took his son away from him, denied the son the relationship with the father for 2 years, and then when this young man, 35 years old, gets out of prison in 2 years, there's no way he's ever going to get another job in IT. No company's going to trust somebody with a prison record, with their safe information, with their protected intellectual property on their computers. So I started agonizing over this, and I had been teaching this sales class called Street Smart Sales based on personality recognition to my entrepreneur group. So I was teaching entrepreneur skills since 1991, and I did it for 20 years, finding there's 7 techniques to thrive in any economy, and when you do all 7, there's no reason for anyone not to be successful in their own business. But how do you find a business that actually suits your personality? So I took the sales training course that I was teaching, and I laid it out, and I found out that there are specific personalities, specific learned skills that go with specific businesses. So you think of a job that you might really enjoy. How do you convert that to a business? So I don't like the idea of, like one of the people who was a client in my Elite Leads business organization, he went into accounting, and after 22 years, he was laid off by one of the Pac-10 accounting firms because they could hire 2 people out of college for the same amount that they were paying him in salary. And he lost it. I mean, yes, he did go out after 2 years and buy a franchise and started his own accounting business, but in the process, he ended up on Ritalin. He was on antidepressant medicine to the point where he had gained about 80 pounds. He had, like, must be no circulation, hardly enough to get by, but he had gone pasty white because his blood wasn't circulating because of the effects of the drugs. And so I recognize that people end up doing businesses because of the income. Like when I was speaking at one of the fraternities, the law fraternity down in San Jose, this young man came up to me and he hugged me, and his eyes were all misty, and he said, I wanted to thank you for giving me permission for not becoming an attorney. And I went, well, gosh, you're 20 years old. Why would you need permission? Both of his parents are attorneys, and they figured if they were, he would be because of the exposure to their careers. But he wanted to be a sports coach. He didn't want anything to do with the law. And I said, well, you're going to have to break this to your parents, but I don't think anybody should ever have a career unless they're passionate about it. Imagine, this is a really awful statistics. More dentists commit suicide than any other profession there is. That's mind-boggling. The reason is, partially, is that a lot of dentists get into it because of the income, the prestige, maybe because of a family member, and then they realize that their whole life is putting their hands in other people's mouths, and every day is so routine that it doesn't really offer them a chance to develop who they are. And yes, it is prestigious, and yes, they can make a lot of money, but they start getting bored and they start experimenting with the laughing gas and some of the other medications, and they end up committing suicide because they're just so unfulfilled. There are so many attorneys who, in California, I'm going to say 1989, we had 170,000 attorneys in California, and half of them actually did not work as attorneys because they couldn't find work as an attorney. And so I started looking at some of these statistics, and I started thinking about, if you take your innate skills, the skills that you're born with. So for me, I am so curious about information. And one of my skills is the ability to connect people. Like, my mind kind of works like a jukebox. I don't know if you noticed that the other day, but we started talking about stuff and things would just pop into my head and I'd be able to pull out that exact record. And I kind of think like I've got this mini jukebox in my brain that just brings, like, I want B5, so that information comes out when it needs to come out. So having this business networking organization, the business development group that I had started in 1991, was perfect for me, because when somebody said, geez, I'm really struggling with this, what I saw was not the problem, but I saw the solution. Like, who can I connect them with so that they don't have to struggle? Because I truly saw, over 20 years working with over 2,500 entrepreneurs, business attorneys, CPAs, business bankers, payroll people, IT people working with computers where they were building them, they were training people on them, lots of different coaches, management consultants, and I literally saw people in 6 months grow their business 50 to 2,000%, one of my payroll clients, over a 2-year time period, by using basic techniques that everybody knows, but they just don't do it. So what I did is I took that information and I combined it into, if this is your personality, so there are 4 basic personalities. There's the driver, the person who just snap, just like that, makes decisions. And drivers know along the way, if what we decided to do is not working, we can alter the course. We can make other decisions. We can add other things. We can add other people. The decision you make today isn't forever. It's just for today. Whereas expressive personalities are the people who like having big teams of people. When you're thinking about building teams, you want an expressive personality because they feed off of having a lot of people working with them. And they're great motivators because of their enthusiasm and their way to express things that engages people. And then there's the amiable personality that you'll find in people who have relationship skills. So you'll find a lot of retail people are amiable, a lot of coaches, management consultants are more drivers than amiable, but they have to have a little bit of amiable to get along with people. And then there's the analytical, and those are the people who do the computers, the CPA work, anything that's logical. They're the software writers, the people doing the mobile phone apps. These are the people who are like, they have a linear way of thinking, and it's from point A to point B, and that's what they're going to do because they see it in their mind. It's logical and it's linear. And it's hard to imagine, but that's where I started out. I was a math major. And then when I started Elite Leads, I was actually 90% left brain. I was very fortunate in the position that I was in that people would come to me and they would say, oh, come take this test so that you know how to tell other people about it. Or, come and let me show you what I do so you can tell other people what I do. And so I got to experience all these amazing processes. And so I got hooked up to a biofeedback machine. So they put these bands around your head and they have these little nodes at your temples and around your index fingers. And on the computer screen, you actually get to see how your left brain and right brain argue back and forth. And so my left brain was really, really dominant. It kind of like squashed my right brain. So I had very little creativity, although I've always sewn. And when I saw this left brain activity, immediately, this is my mind again, how do I make my brain balanced? So I started making jewelry. And I have this amazing collection of jewelry that I've made over almost 18 years, I guess. So typically what I'll do on Sunday to keep my right brain balanced, I'll make a necklace and earring set, and then maybe a couple weeks later, I'll make a dress to go with it. Or I'll make the dress and then I make the earrings and the necklace to go with it. And then I've got this hanger that I made. I'm actually looking at it across the room. So it's all of my holiday earrings that I've made, then my red, my blue, my green, my burgundy. So I've got all these earrings in rows. It's actually 4 feet wide and 5 feet long with 2-inch pockets to put these earrings in. But the cool thing is, after doing that for 5 years, I went back and I took the biofeedback test again. I was 51% left brain.
Wow.
I mean, we are not stuck with what is. Status quo is not status quo, it's just what is today. And so thinking about what kind of business could you start based on those 4 personality quadrants, and then the things like you get up on Saturday morning or Sunday morning, and what is the first thing you think about doing? And a lot of people tell me sleep. We're sleep deprived in America. And I even have a program that will take people who are sleep deprived and get you 8 hours rest in 4 hours. So if you want more information about that, let me know, because we have, I think it's
I
like,
do.
yeah, 4 out of 5 people in this country are sleep deprived, which people don't know this, and I had to become very knowledgeable about this information. When you have sleep deprivation, you end up blowing out your autonomic nerve system. And I literally, there's a process, the Ayurvedic medicine and iridology, they can actually look at your iris, and there's weaves over scar tissue in your irises that tell this iridologist where your body is not functioning properly. And I actually had nearly no autonomic nerve system. So in what that means in everyday terms, I spilled a pan of boiling water on my hand and didn't feel it. I was actually walking into walls because I couldn't figure out where physically I was. I was so sleep deprived. And so, accidents are going to happen. Well, we all drive, and so we get into a car and we're really tired, and then we're putting other people at risk. So it's a very dangerous thing to be sleep deprived. And so this one program, it's Brother Charles, it's synchronicity, and you actually listen to this in stereo headphones when you're going to sleep at night. And in 4 hours, you can wake up and feel like you've had 8 hours rest. I mean, it is absolutely amazing. So there's so many tools that are available that most people don't know, and I've just gathered all these tools. That's that jukebox mind again. It just kind of comes out with this stuff, and I collect it. I'm an info junkie, and I gladly admit that because I know what to do with the information. So let's say you were like my brother, who he actually passed away. It'll be 5 years in January. He had colon cancer, and they infected him with HIV when they were doing surgery. And then instead of 6 months, we actually got 10 years. Through this process, it was a good reason why I had to learn all these health issues. And I took over his care, and that's exactly why he got the 10 years instead of 6 months. So there are ways of overcoming everything. I grew up stuttering. You'll hear me pause at very odd times, and it's me automatically now, without even thinking of it, giving my brain and my tongue a chance to catch up with each other. And so you don't know that that's part of my habit from stuttering, but when I'm speaking, I rarely stutter. But the pauses are so obvious to me when I'm watching the videos afterwards, but they're not when I'm speaking. People don't recognize it. That's why I'm doing it. So there's this ability that we have. So here I was, 15 years old, and my English teacher kept me after school every day, had me read Shakespeare while holding my tongue. And at the end of my sophomore year, I no longer stuttered. Pretty cool, huh?
That is
So
cool.
the next year, because I didn't stutter, I used to say things like my daddy's from Texas. Now, I was California born, raised in Northern California. There was no excuse for me to have a Southern accent. My dad didn't have a Southern accent, but I always called him Daddy, and for some reason that always came out like a Southern drawl. And so then I spent my junior year correcting my enunciation so I no longer had that slurpy way of talking, which I think is very endearing, but I really didn't earn it growing up in California. So then I got through that, and I looked down one day starting my senior year, and I realized that I walked pigeon-toed. I would trip myself constantly, walk and trip from the time I was a little kid. So I spent my whole senior year walking like a duck with my feet pointed out. And at the end of my senior year, I was walking straight without even thinking about it. Now imagine at 17 years old that I realized there was nothing that I could not alter about myself if I wanted to, if I chose to. So every year on my birthday, I actually choose one thing about myself or my life that I want to change, and I work diligently on it every single week so that by the end of the year, that has altered. And it's proof that no matter where we came from, I mean, we know, like Oprah is one of the most prime examples, referred to probably more often than anyone else, from her humble beginnings to being the multi-billionaire that she is, and the good that she has done around the world, and especially for children who don't have anyone to speak up for them. So there is no excuse. If one person's accomplished something like that, anybody can accomplish that. And so, I want to encourage people to think about the things that you really love to do, the skills that you have and the skills that you have learned throughout the years, but the things that you would just jump out of bed on the weekend and go, this is what I'm going to do. Because one of the things that they have found, people who have jobs, more heart attacks happen on Monday morning than the 6.5 days of the week combined. So going to a job you hate, people would rather have their heart attack them than to face that job one more day. And I love putting it that way because it's a gross example of how people have been coerced into doing something with their lives that they don't relate to, they're not enjoying, they don't want to do it, and it's not supporting the lifestyle that they truly deserve. And
Well, I'm going to interject here because this is a very important topic that you're talking about here. I believe that our school system and our whole system tries to inculcate children to, you go to elementary school and then you go to junior high school and then you go to, high school, and then you graduate and you want to go to college. And if you do all those things, there's going to be a job at the end of the rainbow.
Right.
And we now know that that's not the case. That is not the case. Our politicians in Washington, in my opinion, are lying to us. The media is lying to us. And what I want to do in a massive way through social media and through your good work, Sharon, is to let people know they do not have to follow that track and get disappointed.
Exactly.
So could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, one of the things that you and I had talked about is I decided, because of my brother being adopted, I told him before he passed away that I was going to build a school in his honor. So the school is his legacy. It's called the Ultimate Business University. ultimatebusinessuniv.com. And I want to encourage all of you, if children aren't what you're passionate about, find something that you're passionate about and do good works. When you have finally accomplished a lifestyle where you're comfortable, don't just cruise through life. Find a way of giving back to your community. So what I am waiting on pins and needles, I could actually hear any day now that I will have the funding for all of the construction. So getting the construction funding, yeah, I know. It was like, I can't sleep. I'm just, I need that Brother Charles tape so I can get some real solid rest, because I'm just so excited that after 5 years that this is coming together just beautifully.
Can I be a faculty member?
Yes, you can. And in fact, we had talked about that. Visiting faculty, we'll have 600 bungalows on campus that people can come in and actually teach what they're good at. And then we're going to capture that on video and make it available in the video library for our students for years and years to come. Right? So we're going to have everything there for the kids as far as the elective courses. It'll be as much a trade school as the required curriculum is going to be in multimedia. So math, science, history, English is going to look like a Star Wars game. It's actually going to look like a way of engaging these kids the way they're used to using their brains, not the read the book, regurgitate.
Well, I've got to introduce you to a good friend of mine, Ed Mangiarotti. Ed, I'm going to send this out to you. I apologize. I was supposed to call Ed on Monday. Ed and I went to Columbia University together. He was an American football player at Columbia, and we've met, and he's working on an amazing system to help teachers and parents. And so Ed, here's Sharon. So Sharon, you're going to meet Ed Mangiarotti, and Ed has an amazing organization called, and I'll let me just make sure I get the correct, because he's got Ed. Let me just look up here. A little pause in the action. Ed's organization is okay. Let me go there. Ed, see, this is why I love the internet, because I can look it all up. Ed Mangiarotti, his organization is called, okay, here we go. He's got two names, but one of the names is Lookout Learning, lookoutlearning.com. The site isn't, and it's also Astound. There's also, he uses the word astound. And so anyway, I didn't mean to get that off, but just remember, Sharon, Ed Mangiarotti, really excited to connect you with him.
Cool. I love it.
Okay. Back to you. Sorry.
Yeah, we never know what's going to happen when we start these conversations. It's so much fun. So this whole process of, deciding that I was going to do this school, and I didn't know at the time that I told my brother how big it would get. So I have reached out through my contacts through being, in the business environment, and one of the people has a stable of CFOs. Well, one of them just happened to call like the week before, like the Friday before when I called on Monday, and they've actually launched 3 charter schools, and they want to work with me. And this is how magical it is. I went to Dallas for a real estate training event, which later I found out you can't do in California because of the non-disclosure laws that we have here in California. But I was standing at this Fairmont Hotel in Dallas, and a man standing 2 feet from me talking to the Dallas Chamber director, he said, Belize. And I went, oh my God, that's where I'm going to build the school. And we started talking, and 3 days later, I get an email, and it's signed the Honorable Tench. And so I looked up his name, because I've never gotten an email from Honorable anybody, So I'm going, who is this guy? He's the ambassador to Belize, based in Houston, who happened to be in Dallas at the same moment in the same hotel that I was.
Wow.
And that's how magical this is. And so everywhere I go, people are just, oh, let me introduce you to this person. Let me introduce you to that person. Oh, I've got a connection here. I want to be a teacher. I have people all over the world who are involved, and we haven't even launched the school yet. So it's a powerful thing to do when you're passionate about something.
Well,
so
By the way, let me just I'm going to just interject. This is what Ed wrote to me. It's not astound. It's astonished. Sorry,
Wow.
Ed. It's the astonished team, uh, and Lookout Learning is the concept, has a special responsibility because we can literally save and change the lives of millions of children and their families. Right here in America, 55 million K through 12 students, 55 million. 20% get a BA and 20% drop out approximately of those 55 million. And the middle 60% lead lives of what you are talking about, Sharon, quiet desperation.
Right.
And Ed says, and I'm reading this from it, this has to change. Too much pain and suffering in America, and it's unnecessary. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, we had talked a little bit about the statistic that absolutely floored me when I graduated high school in 1968. And yes, I'm dating myself, but I don't mind. I think I've earned every year. There were 90% of all students in America who graduated high school. Today, it's 60%. Right? That's 30% less, and there's no excuse for that. Now, out of that 40% who don't graduate high school, that's 15 million students a year. A year. Half of those students will be incarcerated or dead by their 35th birthday. And it's really no fault of their own. Now, there's a part of me that says, okay, when you're 18 years old, you've got a little bit of learning to do. By the time you're 21, you have to take responsibility. But if you actually don't have somebody championing you, you don't have somebody backing you up, if you don't have somebody saying, wait a minute, that is not the truth. You can actually do anything you want in your life. All you have to do is go out there and figure out how to do it. And I've proven that time and time again. Well, the chances of you breaking out of the mold are not very good. And we talked about the incarceration record. You know, there's Bill Campbell, who was the one of the coaches at the Chicago Bulls. He has a prison ministry program, and what he found is that 90% of all black men in prison did not have a father in their home when they were growing up. And my mind went, is it that simple? We just need to put men in their lives to change the statistic? And if that's the case, why haven't we done it? How long have we known that without doing something about it? So we have 12 million children every summer who go without food because they're used to their only meal being at school. And so they have to kind of go to churches or food lines or some way of how do they survive all summer long. And there's wonderful organizations, Feed the Children, and there's 12 million children a year that actually gathers money to buy McDonald's lunches, which, you know, better than nothing, but not very healthy. You know, there's lots of organizations out there, but most people don't know that we are third from the bottom of children dying from malnutrition in the United States of all countries in the world. Now, how is that possible?
Yeah.
This is an agriculturally rich country.
Yeah. Well,
and we're sending billions in foreign aids to other countries.
Well, the other thing is, you know, we throw out food. I mean, there's just no reason. I mean, it doesn't compute. It's because of it's man-made, human-made. I mean, this shouldn't happen, Sharon. And you talk about. I'm going to just give a little shout out to my friend here. I'm going to go to his website. This is a good friend, Gary Nobles, who Gary played football. We were teammates with the Raiders. And here's Gary's website. It's called Fathers Being Fathers, Responsible Fathers Network. And Gary, it was Gary's birthday this past week. And Gary, I want to lock arms with, he's in St. Louis and I want to lock arms with Gary because we talked about this yesterday, Sharon. You know, in order for a father or a mother, you know, I don't necessarily mean, you know, whatever the family nuclear unit is, economics plays a huge role. And I just want to
look, he has the same color we do. Yeah,
he does. He does have the same color. He does. But talk about, I mean, this is why, I mean, we were talking about this yesterday, the connection between economics and we know that money doesn't bring happiness. There's a lot of people have a lot of money that are unhappy. But when you talk about the foundation, food, shelter, clothing, and if a father or even a mother, whomever is in part of that family unit, if they don't feel like they can provide the sustenance for their family members, what happens to that family unit, Sharon?
Yeah, it just shatters. I mean, people can only take so much, and it's like I remember when my dad turned 45 years old, and I walked into the house and he was actually crying. My dad was stoic. He never cried. He never got emotional. He laughed, but he never got emotional. And, we were told to leave the house. And so me, being very curious and wanting to know what was going on, I went outside, but I hung out by the bedroom window to find out what was going on. And it turned out that my parents were so upside down. And I mean, literally, we had this house that was a Quonset hut out of Alameda Air Station. And I was 12 years old. So 6 years we lived in this house. There were no steps. We had wooden boxes. I mean, we had no interior walls or ceiling, which was cool because my dad would get the tallest Christmas tree he could that touched the roof. But the fact was, we had, it was freezing cold up there. We had to have so many blankets on our bed that my mother had to come in and pull the blankets off so we could actually get out of bed. It was that heavy. And here was my dad feeling so inadequate. He made $125 a month as a surgery nurse in Fort Bragg. And he decided he was going to go back in the Navy. And because he was 45, they turned him down. And that was like his last hope. That was the last playing card that he had. So my dad was probably a little more resourceful because a small town, there aren't very many jobs, there aren't many things to do. So my dad went and talked to one of the nurses that he worked with, and her family owned a farm. And they had a truck, and he talked them into letting him borrow the truck and then pay for the gas and wear and tear. He went to San Francisco and he picked up fresh produce, and he dropped it off at all the produce stands all the way from San Francisco to Fort Bragg. And don't know how much he made, but it couldn't have been that much. And then he went after work, because he went into work at 5 in the morning and he got off at 3. And he went around to all the secondhand stores, the junk stores, and he found bicycle parts. And he brought them home, he sanded them down, he cleaned them up, and he sold these bicycles for $25. And that was how we just got by. And literally, at that point, we were allowed 1 piece of bread a day, and we made the bread. So it wasn't very expensive. We traded food. We bartered our food. I had to walk down the road from the time I was 6 to the chicken ranch so that I could polish chicken eggs on Sunday so that I could walk home with this fresh chicken that was freshly plucked. So we had chicken dinner every Sunday. I mean, this was like extreme poverty, but he got us through this the best way he could. Well, there are a lot of people out there who don't have that wherewithal. They don't know where to turn. And Be Your Own Boss Guide actually breaks down the innate skills, the learned skills, and the personality, and shows how to build a business to earn $50,000 a year minimum. The average is $1,500 to $2,500 to get started in the business, and it's basically a guide that says, when you have the skills to work with your hands, you might be good in construction, or maybe you'd be good at building decks or patios, or something that people would want, and then where are those people? Look at all the new home developments there are. So you can actually go to these new home developments and get clients just by putting postcards that on gotprint.com, you can get 1,000 postcards for $40, 4-color, printed front and back, and you could just actually leave this on front doors with people so that you're able to have the ability to get clients without a really expensive way of marketing your business. So there's just so many things that people can do that they don't know. And this is like giving people permission. So this is a prime example, although it really was so special. I was speaking at PennNet over in Pennsylvania, the Peninsula Burlingame, and this man, I said, how many people have been laid off, once, twice, 5 times, 10 times? We got to 20 times. And this man had been laid off 20 times in 20 years. And you'd think, well, what's wrong with this guy? Well, he just kept working for companies that would be absorbed and lay him off time after time after time.
Yeah, yeah.
And
That's just, see, Sharon.
It makes you crazy, doesn't it?
Well, it makes me, because, we talked about Peter Drucker yesterday.
Yeah.
Peter Drucker is one of my heroes. And Peter Drucker said 10 years ago, before he passed away, in his book, The Knowledge Economy, that there are more opportunities today than the history of humankind. And that the problem is that people don't know. They don't know about the opportunities. And if you are in a job right now, you should thank your lucky stars, love your job, but also prepare for when that job goes away. Because in a capitalist society, is if they can take a machine or something that can replace you, that's just what's going to happen. So you need to prepare for that. And there are opportunities to be your own boss, to have your own revenue stream coming in, so that when the time does come that you have to leave your job or you're outsourced or whatever, it's not as painful.
Exactly. So what I did, I normally don't do this, but my heart just aches for this guy. He was 52 years old. His wife divorced him after the 10th time. He had spent he had 2 boys. He spent their education fund, so he had nothing left for them to go to college. He had taken all the money out of his IRA, and he was now living in a room in a house and driving a car that was over 20 years old that had a coat hanger for an antenna. And it just broke my heart to think, here's a guy who was making $80,000 a year and had gone through this upheaval in his life 20 times. It is so demoralizing. And I said, okay, Tom, what are you really good at? And he said, I'm only good at golf, but not good enough to make money at it. I went, wait a minute. How many men have you worked with who have teenage boys that they would love to play golf with their sons, but it's like teaching your own son to drive a car? It's not much fun for the son or for the father. I said, I want you to spend the weekend, and I want you to call every man that you can find that you've ever worked with and asked if they'd be interested in paying you $50 a month for a group lesson. And he not only got 20 guys to pay him $50, but he got, I think it was 5 that paid for private lessons, $50 a week.
Wow.
6 months later, he had matched what he was making as an IT person, $80,000 a year, right? And I said, okay, now you have enough people with the ones you're coaching, with the ones that they have their friends that they know. Let's have a golf tournament and see what we can do. We'll get sponsors. We'll make it fun. We'll get their dads out as the galley. We'll just make it really fun. He made $110,000 in one day.
Wow. Wow. And what you did is you focused, you got him to, what is his passion? What was his passion?
Exactly. So he played as much free golf as he wanted. He replaced his children's education fund in 2 years. He bought a house. He met a woman. When I met him, he was all hunched over, which is a great, lack of self-esteem, body posture. He was standing up straight. He looked 10 years younger. And about 5 years ago, I got a postcard, and it was from the Bahamas. And he said, I just wanted to update you. My new wife and I have moved to the Bahamas. We're playing golf every day we want to.
Wow.
And I get rolling body chills when I tell these stories. It's just like one person comes into your life, and when you will just stop and pay attention, because we talked about this before we started. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to get the same results. And the definition of insanity is expecting that you're going to get different results. And if today is not the day, tomorrow is December 1st. This is the end of 2012. What has this year taught you about who you are, about your life, about what you want in your life, and where are you going to go from here? How are you going to actually show up as a shining example to your children, to your grandchildren, to your community, to your neighbors? One person breaks free, and it's like a snowstorm, like, that snowball rolling down the mountain. You inspire other people by being the shining light yourself. And that's what I want to encourage people to do. There is a business that anybody can start. And honestly, I went kicking and screaming, did not want to be an entrepreneur. I wanted that paycheck. I wanted that security. I wanted the insurance. I wanted the company car. I wanted to know that what I was doing this week, I would do next week, the week after, the month after, the year after.
I could see you, because you were left brain linear. I could see you working at NASA or the Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Well, I would have been really good, other than I hate research, right? So
no. You'd have been at the control panel saying,
yeah, I'm
Houston,
the one driving.
Houston, we're ready for takeoff, Houston.
I'm pushing the button. So I love to show people how to actually break out of these molds. And that kind of brings us to the second book, the Neuro-Emotional Anti-Sabotage Technique. Now, I kind of alluded to the fact that my parents were very dysfunctional parents, and I was raised with every abuse you could imagine. You and I talked about it a little bit, but, the big story is I am who I am today because of all the lessons that I learned. No matter what I went through my childhood, no matter what I experienced, it has brought me to who I am today, and I am so grateful for all those lessons. Now, it hasn't always been the case. I had to learn how to embrace those lessons, to really wrap my arms around, yes, my parents were abusive, but it taught me to be sensitive enough that I actually learned how to create this program, which will remove every negative emotion that anyone has ever been exposed to. And the negative emotions are what hold us back. Which we talked a little bit about sports, and I kind of was fighting this, for the school, for UBU, the Ultimate Business University, thinking I'm not going to let them play football. God darn it, I don't want these kids to be hurt. I don't want to be responsible for doing it. And then somebody said to me, who happens to be from the Detroit Lions, he said, Sharon, you're going to cheat them out of the possibility of having a football scholarship if they're really good at football. I went, oh, darn.
Well, I do have to, Sharon, I do have to add, okay, I want to mention, yes, sports is wonderful, but there's the most popular sport in the world is soccer. And if any of you know how I feel about this, soccer, I love soccer. The reason soccer is the most popular is every country in the world, you just need a ball and put up two sticks for, it's not expensive.
Game to do. Yep.
It's not expensive. Now, if Ultimate Business University wants a soccer team, you should have a soccer team. But again, I caution people: the hitting the head,
yep,
with the soccer ball,
wrong.
We will not do that. And unfortunately, the sports like hockey, boxing, and American football, you're hitting the head. And so I have just in the last year and a half gotten very active in this field, because I played American football with a helmet for 12 years. So your friend with the Detroit Lions, his message is, yes, you could play sports. You want to have sports at the Ultimate Business University, but I would just add, let's look at swimming, golf, track and field, soccer, without hitting
So
the.
you're on my side.
That's all.
Yay!
I just had to say that. So you're unfortunately. I'm just going to say to your friend, who I don't know from the Detroit Lions, American football as it is today, in my opinion, I would not vote for American football with
See,
the helmet.
that's how I was, and we
Okay.
talked about the head trauma, and
Well,
most people don't realize that any head trauma, any like especially in the frontal lobe, actually is the cause of like anger, stress, diabetes,
emotion,
alcoholism, drug
emotional
addiction.
control.
Yeah, exactly. So those guys who actually go into the rage, like I was so shocked. I'm trying to remember kind of approximately the year 2003. There was a man on Highway 680, over East Bay, and he took his semi truck and plowed into 15 cars on the freeway on purpose.
Yeah.
His wife left him with 5 kids. He couldn't afford child support. The oldest kid was 12, and he had asked for assistance, and he was turned down because of the salary that he made, even though he couldn't take care of his kids and bring in help for the kids. And he got so frustrated that he thought his only way of taking care of those kids was to take himself out and take out everybody else with him.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's not logical, but
Yeah.
you can understand when people are pushed to their limit.
Yeah. Well, I do have to getting back, and again, I apologize, but you're touching a very touchy thing. I have to read this to you. This was a quotation in the New York Times today or yesterday from a specialist, a concussion specialist and researcher from Burlington, Ontario, and he said the culture is entrenched at all levels, from pee-wee to university. Now, he was referring to hockey. It's the same thing with American football, from Pop Warner to Stanford University and all of the American football. Dr. Paul Eklund, a concussion specialist and researcher in Burlington, Ontario, and the lead author of the study. He says, in quotations, concussion is a significant public health issue that requires a generational shift. As with smoking or seatbelts, it just isn't going to happen overnight. It takes massive effort and collective movement. Now, what I want to say here, Sharon, is thank God for the internet, because this can go viral. And I want this to go viral so that the whole world knows about Sharon Abbott and the good work and the amazing work, the angel that she is for not only me, but that she can be for you, but also the passion that I have for this terrible tragedy that's going on right now, where people are playing sports where they're hitting their head. And 10 years from now, I'm predicting 10 years from now, Harvard University, Yale, Princeton, they are not going to play American football as we know it today. Now, that's my prediction, because they don't make money from it. It's not a big business at Harvard or at Princeton or at Columbia, and they're going to lead the way. And Chris Nowinski, who's written a book, let me see, it's called Head Games, and I don't have it here in front of me, but in any event, you can go to headgames.com. Chris Nowinski happens to be a graduate of Harvard University, and he's one of the spokespeople about this topic. But in any event, I apologize, Sharon. I just get real excited about this.
No, I'm right there with you, because one of the things that I have found is there is so many things that people can do to reverse. Like we didn't even talk about this, but this is a scalar wave laser, and it has all of the Rife settings in it. The Rife machine was invented in 1935 by Dr. Royal Rife, and he was actually curing people of cancer in 1935. And he was put in prison because he was actually curing them not using drugs and surgery.
Wow.
His machine is what I was told in 2000, that I had breast cancer and I had 6 months to live. And here it is 12 years later. And so what did they know? And I
Wow.
used an original Rife machine, and this laser, the scalar wave laser, has all of the settings in it, but it also has settings to reverse the trauma of the frontal lobe. So you can actually make that frontal lobe come back to the size that it's supposed to be, so you no longer have the rage, and then combining that with the nesting, the neuro-emotional
Oh,
anti-sabotage technique.
I definitely need that. Can you put that up?
Yeah, I wonder if it'd work through the computer.
By the way, when you were diagnosed with breast cancer, did you do any chemotherapy?
No, I refused to. I had seen what it did to my brother two
Oh,
years earlier, and I was appalled. They
yep,
burnt my brother from the waist to his knees. He had no skin at all on his backside from the radiation.
yeah.
The chemo was so awful. It's worse than any human torture I could imagine someone going through. And they kept messing up the dosages, and so he had to go through it 5 months straight, 5 days a week, every week for 5 months. And it made me
I,
ill to
I,
think
I,
of what he went through.
I have a friend named Shannon Petter whose mother lives over on your side, and she went through the radiation, and the radiation killed her heart,
Yeah.
and her mother had to have a heart transplant, and she's the longest surviving heart transplant. She's been, I think she had it 25 some years ago, 25, and it was the chemotherapy, the radiation,
Oh.
that because of breast cancer. So what you did